change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
Hey everyone, we're back for another episode of the Fundraising AI Podcast. I'm Nathan Chappell and I'm here with Scott Rosenkrantz. I don't even know what episode this is anymore, Scott. We officially gave up counting, which I think is a good sign, right? It either says that we just are, ignorant or we just don't care. But I take it as we passed that hump and we no longer need to count because we passed our expectations of how far we thought we were going to go with this.
Yeah, it feels like episode 1,000. I feel like we've covered a lot, right? So we're probably up there.
I think the coolest thing is now that we have people that actually tune in and listen for, 30 minutes a week or every other week. I'll get text messages. I don't know if you do too, of like, when's the next episode coming out? And, I can't wait for the next one, or I just, I needed that today. And in fact, I got a request yesterday from a good friend, Lindsay Simons, who, we used to work together at CCS, who requested, she's like, when are you going to talk about GPTs and how to build GPTs and a bit more on agentic too? So we've got to cover a lot more. And we're going to, as we peel back the onion on the book, because we do talk about agentic in the book and GPTs. And honestly, it's one of those things that's so easy to do. And in fact, what we're going to talk about today with memory, it almost negates the need for some GPTs. I don't know, in my opinion. It's got some interesting...
Yeah, I have some thoughts about it because I don't know... Yeah, we'll talk about memory.
Yeah.
But it might change the way that I use the tool.
It definitely...
I'm just thinking about how there might be... Things might blur, right? Like I don't use it always from my perspective. Sometimes I'm pretending to be a role when I'm using it for demos, right? So I don't know what it's going to pick up and what it doesn't.
All right. Well, so we're already in the thick of it. So we just jumped into the deep end of the pool. One of the key updates this week was OpenAI, or last week was OpenAI released a new version of basically enhanced memory. And there are lots of implications to this. Enhanced memory is essentially means that unless you create a temporary chat and you tell it not to save this information, that the memory will be saved automatically and it will recall it, perfectly to kind of build upon itself. And so there's lots of pros and cons with this, but for me, it actually saves me one of the kind of best practice tips that I used to teach people, right? Which is that missing step of when you're done editing a document, take that final one and put it back in because it needs to know. I would still say do that because it won't know what you edited and put into, say, LinkedIn or whatever. But it really, in my opinion, it really accelerates the learning, right? So having that concept memory, I was force feeding memory to it over the last 2 years and it got really good, really fast at understanding my voice. But now, I think it's going to get 2/3 of the way there without needing to do that extra step every single time. But what are your thoughts? So pros, cons?
I mean, definitely a pro. It's on the whole, it's a huge step in the right direction, right? But the thing that caught my attention was that it's retroactive. So it's going to look at all past chats and bring them into memory immediately, right? And again, I use this for a lot of different reasons. I don't always use it from my perspective, right? Sometimes I use it personal, sometimes work, but then sometimes I'm using it in a demo and I'm saying, hey, I'm a major gift officer at this place, help me walk through. And I'm not, right? So I don't know how much it's going to carry that weight. And right now I can't go back in all those, there's way too many chats and threads for me to figure out what is what to say. This doesn't pertain to me. This does. Only focus on this.
No, I mean, sometimes I'll use it as an antagonist, right? To prove a point of I had it write an essay on why fundraisers are no longer needed in fundraising, and so you do wonder how, does it know the intent of those? Or, I don't know, this would be interesting too. There's a new voice mode, advanced voice mode. Have you played with Monday, the model Monday or the character Monday?
Only a little bit, not in the voice mode, in the chat a little bit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What I took from it is it's supposed to be like Grok, right? Just it's sassy,
probably worse, but yeah, I mean, I like Grok and very intentionally sassy. And it's just even in advanced voice mode, because, I'm super lazy with typing now. So it's just anything I can do with voice, I'll do. And it's oh, great. You found me. What do you want? It's like that. And it's just hilarious. And so Connor Contreras, who who's now on the Donor Search AI team as kind of a subcontractor employee helping out with something, he sent over the funniest chat the other day using Monday. and it was basically like something about it was somewhat inappropriate about like a dog kind of jumped up and hit him in the nards essentially. And so he has this conversation, and it just, I mean, honestly, it was very colorful and hilarious. And I'm like, this is like the funniest interaction between a human and a thing. And it was like nicknames of his dog, who, the ball killer and stuff like this. It's just like super funny. But then I'm literally thinking your model just became toxic. If Monday is in this conversation, in these series of conversation, because this thing went on and on and on and on, it was hilarious. But if that is part of his memory, because and I assume it is, because it's just whatever model you're using the voice of the character Monday, that his model now is just going to bring up all kinds of crazy things every time.
Right. And I think because they gave a little bit of context about what it's going to mean moving forward, but there's still a lot of questions. Like, does this no longer require the need for custom instructions? Right? Because if I just put in a chat all my custom instructions, does that get carried through in every future conversation? And sometimes in conversation, I want things to be in bullet points. Sometimes I want it to be in tables. Sometimes I want it to be in paragraphs. So how does that move through the rest of it? That's what I don't really know.
I think that's another missing, low-hanging fruit thing, is that many people don't know about custom instructions. In fact, I don't know if the free version allows custom instructions. It probably doesn't, just because this just seems to be a feature that you pay for. And again, we've said it 1,000 times, if you're not paying $20 a month, you need to, because if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. It gives you control over privacy, but it also gives you access over custom instructions. So I just shared with you earlier is that, my custom instructions are, when you create an image for me, create it in widescreen format, because I almost only use images for PowerPoints. So, and I was really tired of, these squares. And I have custom instructions of I like brevity, but don't use brevity in replace of accuracy. So accuracy is always also important. I've had a custom instruction for a long time to not use the word delve. Delve is probably the most telltale sign that your AI is AI. Right. I freaking hate that word. I never would use the word delve in any context, in any real human conversation. And then just as 2 weeks ago, when I think it was 4.0 mini or whatever got released, the word, and I don't know if you've had the word vibe showing up, it's shown up in so many conversations, not just for me, for so many people. It's like, oh, I dig your vibe or something. And I'm like, what is going on? So now I never use the word delve and never use the word vibe, because I absolutely hate it.
I fortunately have not come across vibe. I mean, vibe coding and all the in the vernacular there, but not ChatGPT trying to shove vibe down my throat.
No, it's,
I love delving into how you feel about it.
It's such a good vibe. The funniest thing, and I actually probably said I wasn't going to share this, but I had to share this. So I wake up in the morning about a week ago, and there's a text message. It was from family members. And so my son, Toby, who's a data scientist, and his wife, Cynthia, and my wife are on this text thread. And it says, don't pay attention to the prompt, but just look at what it says. And it says, the generative AI, actually, the chat basically said, oh, I'm digging this vibe, way to go. And I'm like, there it is again. And then, of course, because you said, don't look at the prompt, I'm like, first thing I do is look at the prompt. And the prompt was, hey, what I should not read. I won't read it directly, but it basically was like, hey, what kind of fashion sense do you recommend for my husband to look like a lumberjack? And I was freaking dying. It was the funniest freaking conversation, and went on and it's about yeah, I'm digging this vibe, and you might want to think of a nice soft flannel and some blue jeans. And then she's like, well, do you think a t-shirt is good? She's like, yeah, a t-shirt is a quintessential, just a white t-shirt underneath that flannel, and has this whole thing about my son's fashion sense being dressed up like a lumberjack. And so she was just beet red, dying, because I think it's one of those things that you text and you're like, I can't believe I just texted that. That's going to show up on a podcast someday.
Yeah.
And it did.
Speaking of that, I did text the guy who manages cars that pick me up for the airport. I texted him, we're just taking off. Hope Milo went to bed soon. Love you. And supposed to go to my wife.
Did he say love you too?
He did say I love you too.
I love you too. I'll pick you up on time. Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, honestly, this was there was one where I just screenshotted it. So I was asking it about this word. I have a lot of domain names, that. I have I don't know, somewhere 80 to 100 domain names. I lost count, but I have a domain name, philanthropologist.com. And I'm like, I've had this for years, like philanthropologist.com. Like, it's just like not a word. Well, first I had to check to make sure it wasn't a word, but I know. And it says, it basically, it was like, it rounds out this thing that's original and deeply human. Honestly, it's a vibe. And it uses the emoji fire thing next to the vibe. And then it says, if you ever want a riff on how to build philanthropologist into this thing, let me know. Like, I'm like, what is going on? It's like the Grateful Dead version of ChatGPT or something. It just all of a sudden happened overnight. So that was one thing. So memory is a big deal. Obviously, Vibe is just a throw in there for free for you. Definitely use memory and pay for the product. And the other thing was OpenAI Academy came out. So, we've always said there's no like playbook for this, and it's just all best practices. And it's true. Like, we've all as the industry kind of grown up in the last 2 years trying to figure out, like, provided an identity, provided context, provided examples, and then iterate. And so all those things that we do, but OpenAI Academy is out and it's free, and anybody could go into it and start to go deeper. And even I saw they even posted yesterday Agentic, an Academy whole thing on Agentic and GPTs. And so you can just absolutely dive in. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And this is an awesome resource. I mean, like, Google came out with, I think, like a 60-page guide on prompting not too long ago, right? They all see like this is an absolute need, right? We just need a little bit more direction. And how many times do we talk to nonprofits that access to ChatGPT, but nobody really knows what to do with it, and so they're just kind of like sitting on a license that's going unused because they need that direction. So great examples like this, having that as a resource. I mean, again, it's one of those where not everything's going to be specific for you, but for all the videos, it's for higher ed, for business use case, for personal. Watch them all and just see where you can pick up some ideas to apply personally.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot, and we talked about it in the book is, AI is like bottled water, and generative AI, like some modern AI. It's like bottled water. They're all the same, but they have a different flavor. And the memory, going back to the memory thing, it's a very intentional and very, very important step for these models to essentially become really sticky. Because if all water tasted exactly the same, and there was, all the same shaped bottle and all the same whatever, they all look the same, you just kind of switch all, between them. But of course, like my experience with Claude, right? And I had Claude Perplexity in chat since the beginning. And then I got to the point where Claude basically didn't really even know me. Like, it was just like, or we're just still on first date, and it was like GPT, we've been married for years, and so it's like, I don't need you to stick around. Like, I don't need to explain stuff to you anymore. This is just a pain. And so, going to this like real-time memory is the critical step in building AGI. And really is what is going to make the product much stickier. So while you should try all the different products and Copilot and Gemini and Perplexity and Grok, and maybe not Grok, and probably definitely not Llama, but those are all totally our biases, of course. Try them all, whatever. And just know what you're getting into with some of them, DeepSeek and those. But try them. Find the one that works best for you. Like, some people, I don't understand why they like Pepsi, but some people like Pepsi better than Coke. It's just weird for me. But like, some people will like one of these models better. We've found, I think, almost by creature of habit, right? So we're at Donor Search. We got Gemini for everybody. And what did we find a couple of months later? People using ChatGPT.
Most everyone using ChatGPT.
Right. So now we're getting ChatGPT.
And I think a big part of that, at least for me, why I never really adopted Gemini like that was because the lack of custom instructions, right? Again, now memory is going to be the different part of that. But I don't talk like you, right? We don't have the same thought process. So if I gave Gemini a prompt and you gave it the same prompt, it will give us the same exact output, right? Generally the same, like, it's not tailored to you, it's not tailored to your role or anything like that. So that's a significant gap. And especially with it being built in Gmail, like, if anyone knows how I email someone in my language and email, it would be Google, but that never gets carried over to Gemini, which is just like it made it a little bit more challenging. But again, back to the memory, that's a huge value add, right? Having all that tracked, I think it's going to put more importance to, like, you ever go in and manage your memory? And like, it's interesting,
it's
right?
Do you like, I encourage people to do this, like on a Friday night, whatever you're like going to bed, just go back and look at your memory and see what it actually has been retaining about you.
Yeah. And the things that it finds valuable, like it said, my last name is in my email address. Okay, great. I don't know why ChatGPT would ever need to like care about that. But I think there's going to put more emphasis on managing your memory, deleting out what you don't want it to keep track of, and just like keeping actively using that as a primary tool. And then you can export that. If you ever do want to go back to Claude, like
You can.
it's a great way to just compile all the information about you that you probably don't even know about yourself and push it in there.
And I think this is why we're seeing a lot of people not reject, they're not using, say, Copilot in the same way they're using ChatGPT, even though it's the same model, is because the Copilot Enterprise is basically only trained on your data. It's not creating this intimate kind of relationship with you. So it feels foreign. It feels like that's something I want to use. I'm going to analyze an Excel spreadsheet or create a PowerPoint, all those things. Like it does a really, really good, like it's great for that. It's embedded in all the Microsoft tools and it's just seamless. So that's amazing. And like Gemini is also in Sheets and all that kind of stuff. But I think where the average person is just like, I want this to answer all the questions, that I have. Like I looked at my memory the other day and it was like Nathan's walking in the woods. Nathan's rebuilding a chicken coop. Like it's like the craziest stuff because I'm like out there. I'm like, what's the average, height for a chicken feeder or something? And it's like, and Nathan's allergic to grass. And it's just like the craziest thing. But when you think about how generative AI is built and why it works as well as it does, is because they found that by consuming so much information, which wasn't possible before in history, but by consuming every written thing on the internet, that language became very predictable and actually very precise. And it started to predict, what we were going to say next. That's all that it does. So when it gains all of that memory about us, it'll be able to do the same thing. It feels like second nature, right? Because it's just gathering all the information, whether it's relevant specifically or not. Enough data is going to round out, essentially holistically, like the essence of you, which is pretty crazy to think about.
It is pretty crazy to think about. And I took a like assessment, kind of like a personality or psych assessment for just the hell of it. And I'm thinking pushing that in there just so like it knows more about me than, again, I would be able to ever communicate myself, so that it can better learn how to talk to me, what I need, my motivations, and so on.
I think it's a great idea.
Make it that repository of like you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even better if you have multiple, right? And so that you've got, multiple versions, because those assessments can be fairly biased in some senses of like, well, when were you taking it? What was your mindset and all that? But if you had different assessments from different times, providing the essence of yourself. Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Well, anything else you want to cover before getting to next chapter of the book?
Yeah. There's one other thing I think I posted about on LinkedIn. It got actually quite a number of views. I had people texting me saying they wish they never read it because they couldn't sleep at night. I don't know if you read it, AI 2027. So AI 2027. You talked about
it and it scared me too much to actually look into it.
You definitely need to read it. Everyone should read it because this is the most in-depth, quantifiable study on AI in the next couple of years, to the point where they literally took everything they know about it and they project out month by month where like literally the top people in the world, like all over the world that do predictions, got together to create this document. And it's just AI2027.com, I think. I'll just double check. And yeah, AI2027.com. And it kind of guides you through this really cool website where you can scroll down. As you're scrolling down, it will show how AI is progressing. It's, I think they have a conservative approach on how it will actually end up in 2027, but it ends the website with a choose your own adventure. And the choose your own adventure is actually kind of interesting because that down at the bottom end, the study ends and it leaves you with two choices. And it was like, choose your ending, either slow down or race. And then you click on that and you go in deeper, because that's essentially, the choices that we'll have to make. That technology will continue to present itself to be able to do things at an increasingly fast pace. And maybe some of those things are not beneficial. But do we slow it down, or do we continue and then trust that humans will essentially self-regulate if the government doesn't intervene? So AI2027.com. It's sort of long, so my own personal hack on this. So I actually really enjoyed reading it, but I wanted to distill it down. So I went into NotebookLM, and again, it's crazy how many people don't know about NotebookLM. And if you're listening to this and you don't know about NotebookLM, this is literally your homework. Like today, go and Google NotebookLM, and it will show up right away because it's owned by Google. And so NotebookLM, you can I created a notebook. I took the URL, AI2027.com. I pasted it in there. And then I pasted a couple other things in there that were related to it. Actually, there's an interview by the authors of AI 2027, a YouTube video. YouTube's also owned by Google, so it's native into NotebookLM. So I posted the YouTube video into NotebookLM. It created this like super AI 2027 like notebook. And then I hit generate, got an 18-minute podcast of it. And it was like hours and hours worth of reading distilled into this like 18-minute podcast. So, I mean, that whole process, what took, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that to do. And then it took a few minutes to generate the podcast while I, drank a Diet Coke, of course. It's so easy. I mean, it changes the way we can absorb and learn. And you've shared this before, is that our ability to produce information far exceeds our ability to consume it at this point. So finding ways to like make that consumption digestible and, and improve your memory and your retention that way. I don't know. I think if nothing else, go home or do whatever, pull over, go to NotebookLM and throw in a website or a YouTube video or something you're curious about but you don't have the attention span to read or investigate, and it will blow your mind.
Yeah, I've worked with a couple different organizations where using NotebookLM, because it does such an incredible job of distilling all the information, right? Like taking all these different resources, putting into like something digestible, like with a frequently asked questions, a timeline, all these different things, a briefing document. But if you work at an organization, put all the information into NotebookLM on your organization, on your foundation, on your annual reports, all that. Have it create that briefing doc, and then use that briefing doc in the chat, right? GPT around it, so it's always speaking from that language, so it knows more about you and the work that you do. So like, use these tools together, right? Just because one's Google, one's OpenAI, and they're one's audio, one's text. Like, figure out ways in your workflow to be able to put them all together to make it all work for you.
Yeah, we've said this a lot. We can't overemphasize it. Yeah, that. The biggest limitation to exploring what's possible with AI is your own imagination. I mean, it really comes down to your imagination of combining tools and reverse engineering things. And there was somebody who posted on LinkedIn the other day, is like pretty prolific in agentic AI, and was basically like, he's an entrepreneur, and he's like, it used to take me like 12 to 24 months to prove or disprove a business plan. And like, I do this, I create a product, whatever, and then I'd fail. Like most new businesses, and a lot of new businesses fail. He's like, now you can role play those businesses and almost set up, basically predictions and go through that cycle in minutes, not years, and much less painful. So just so many ways to use these tools. I think people just really underestimate how powerful they are and what they're capable of. And so let's go into chapter 3. We're already on chapter 3 of our book, Nonprofit AI, which comes out basically May 6th, so very soon.
Weeks after this episode rolls out, probably.
Yeah. We're getting our advanced copies. We confirmed this week with Wiley that they're already in the warehouse and they're shipping. If anyone is going to AFP Icon, they'll probably get a copy of it because we've got a few hundred copies showing up there and doing book signings there in the Woodmark Children's Hospital Conference. So yeah, super excited about it. And we've got a bunch of treats that we'll be promoting on that. But chapter 3 is on AI fluency. And it's something that I think you and I, it kind of boggles my mind sometimes because we see how powerful this tool is and how, like, if I had to hire someone, there's no doubt if I hired someone that has like deep subject matter expertise, but is resistant to AI versus someone who's more of a generalist, but really craves, an innovation and exploration, I would absolutely hire the generalist. I said, we kind of say this, that I believe that a curious generalist will outpace a subject matter expert any day in the future and at every level. And so, a friend of mine ended up just hiring someone. She had to hire an executive assistant. One was like a 20-year veteran, high level administrative assistant. The other one he had graduated or had graduated from the Marines, had not gone to college, but loved AI and was like, I just think it has so much power to help amplify my work. She hired the Marine, and it showed up in his work because his thank you letter showed up like minutes after the call, and it was very nice and actually reflected the conversation. The other one, I sent one a few days later. And so all that to say, AI fluency is something that you and I see in our personal lives and our professional lives. And it's a fun chapter to write because there's a lot of studies around AI fluency that we actually cover in the book as well.
And it's all like, it's a journey, just like all of this is, right? So it's all soft skills that play a bigger role in how AI fluent you're going to be, right? But curiosity, a big thing that you talk about, like, is the one thing that we as humans still have, right? Like you say. And that's what has pushed every tool to date in the history of humanity to more efficiency or any invention, it all comes from curiosity and thinking, like looking at something and saying, what are other ways I can use this tool for? Right. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a big part of it. Right. And if I was, I know there's more to get into, but just back to what you were saying, if I was hiring for a nonprofit now and I didn't feel like we were AI fluent and maybe we didn't really know what we were doing, like I would make sure every single role that I hired for had AI fluency in that job description. So that way, at the very least, I'm learning from new people coming in on how they're using it. They can educate others. But in the best case scenario, you're getting all that efficiency right out of the gate.
Yeah. How do you define, so someone who, this seems like a foreign term, AI literacy, like how are you defining that?
Well, that's a good question that I didn't think about the answer of. I think it's just seeing the opportunity, right? I mean, it's a pretty, there are defined results, right? And then also the whole undefined, but seeing this as an opportunity, a tool that allows you to do more with less, right? Allows you to identify different perspectives or just be more efficient in your workflow, but seeing this as an opportunity that you need to take advantage of. And as long as you're working towards that goal, and again, it's a journey, like you are on the path to AI fluency. But I think part of it, even to what you were talking about earlier, like using different tools, right? It's not just one tool is the end all be all, but knowing what tools do what and being to bring them into kind of your toolbox of leveraging them for different purposes.
Yeah, no,
Wide definition.
no, I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, I think it's really about that opportunity to upskill, to learn something new, to, create a new orientation where, AI can help. And you always talk about this, like put the Post-it note on your screen of how AI can help until that's your primary orientation. You just go to it automatically. AI fluency for me is really that quest for understanding, like, what is it capable of and what is it not? And that's always going to evolve. So AI literacy never ends. You just continue to be curious. And it was very different than our early days, right? In our early days in AI ML, so the machine learning side of things, AI fluency was truly like from a data science perspective. It was, F1 scores and really understanding precision and recall and, thresholds and features. And we still do those things in predictive AI. That was how you defined or how you could tell if someone was real in AI or not, right? I mean, it immediately. And people used to all the time, it's like, well, how do you evaluate precision or recall? And you're like, well, what, both, so there was just always, remember those, they were just crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's like, it's just more about an orientation. And there's both, I think, the talent acquisition side. So people that, and we cover this in the book, there's a bunch of studies from AWS and others that show that people with AI fluency command more money, right? And so employers are willing to pay more. It's like, actually, what is it? It's 30 to 40% more in the AWS study for people that have AI fluency. And so there's that side, the acquisition side, but there's also the retention side, because we've actually seen firsthand, in this case, we saw a fundraiser leave a role because this organization was very resistant to AI, didn't use AI, didn't want to use AI. And this fundraiser was this hyper competitive person and said, I'm leaving. I'm going to another organization that is using AI because I'm competitive and I want to be successful. And then ironically, what happened 6 months later or a year later is that prior organization, actually ended up getting a bunch of AI embedded. And so that's truly essentially the competitive nature of, that upskilling and that opportunity for people to be successful.
And you've had a couple people, because I know you have a very wide network. Couple people have called you to say, what orgs are using AI? Because I don't. So it's not just that one person that was able to level up, but like this is a focus, right? People want to work at organizations that are being efficient, that aren't putting more work on them, but not giving them the resources to do that work, right? And so it's kind of like an internal and external, because you as staff also can push your organization to AI, right? To using AI. But the stat that we often talk about is that it's not the data, it's not the models that make AI adoption successful. It's the culture, and that speaks to those soft skills, right? It's not about just learning the tools. It's about having that mindset of being able to test things and fail things and just look for new opportunities.
I think one of the challenges in AI fluency is really the bottleneck ends up being in leadership oftentimes. Not always, right? Because there's leaders that are super curious, and even though they're not technologists necessarily, they know that that's important to their organization. The private sector lives and dies by this, right? If you don't innovate, you die. The nonprofit sector, doesn't as much because the incentives are a bit different in the sense that, the people who give money are not the ones receiving the benefit of the money. So the people who receive the benefits aren't the ones giving the money, right? And so there's just less of an appetite and need to innovate if things aren't going well. And that just slows things down. And I think when I think about leadership, AI fluency needs to be a leadership competency. It needs to be, you don't have to be a data scientist or know precision recall. The same way this is Allie K. Miller's thing. She said a couple of years ago when we were with her at OpenAI, is that, you don't need to know how a microwave is made, but you need to know the effect of it and what it's capable of doing, right? It makes food hot. Well, is it hot enough? Is it still cold? Like, how to use it effectively is not the same as how to build one. And so I think that's the same thing as at all levels of organizations, we see a lot of pent up frustration from mid-level employees who are like, we want to do these things, we want to innovate, but there's no appetite for it up north, up at the top of in the C-suite. And so I think this needs to be a call, and hopefully they read the book, because we make a really strong case of why AI fluency is leadership, competency going into the future.
And I think sometimes on the opposite side as well. So sometimes there is that appetite, right? Leadership knows that this is the direction they need to move in, but they think that just by buying the tool or telling the team like, hey, we're going to do this, that's it, right? They expect that their team is going to
check
execute.
The box. Yeah.
Right. But it's an ongoing process. It's an evolution. And so you need to make it, or they need to make it a priority all the time and let their team know that, hey, I'm expecting something from this. It's not just getting the tool, but I expect that this is going to move our organization into a different level.
Yeah. Yeah. So right before this call, we're always amazed. It's funny that we're amazed because when will we stop being amazed? But right before the call, we're like, okay, we're going to cover chapter 3, AI literacy. It's like one of our favorite chapters, something we talk a lot about. And we really believe that, this AI changes how the world works essentially in almost every role, and all I had to do is go to chat and be like, hey, summarize chapter 3 of nonprofit AI and give me some bullet points. And it's like, so good. AI fluency is a core leadership competency. AI literacy gap could widen the digital divide because it's true, right? That we've always said this since, 2017, which is like AI won't replace fundraisers, but fundraisers who use AI will replace those that don't. That's true with lots of jobs. It actually summarized all the data that we have in the book about AI literacy commanding higher salaries, how AI is going to reshape job roles, not just replace them. So, and we go through this in the book in detail from like grant writers, prospect development managers, program managers, how AI is going to actually shift those roles. And in almost all of those cases, actually allows the individuals to work at a higher caliber. And very few of them that we see are going to be completely replaced. But if they are using AI wisely, that prospect researcher becomes an analyst or becomes a strategist. If you try to still be a prospect researcher, you're kind of screwed because frankly, there's still a need for a person to overview, but like to look at, you started out in prospect research, like you still need to be able to, validate things and have a human in the loop at all things. And we talk about that throughout the book. But if you just want to do things the same way and spend hours or days, doing profiles versus use AI to do those things, then be the human in the loop, then become the strategist of say, hey, here's how this data applies. I think that opportunity exists in so many areas within philanthropy.
Agreed. Yeah. And that's where, especially on the predictive side, because predictive is making those decisions for you at a level way more advanced than you'd be able to do on your own. So if your role is focused on making decisions, right? Quantitative decisions, that's where that specific task is going to get replaced, but that doesn't mean that your job is going to get replaced, to your point. So it's just a matter of adapting to whatever the new need is.
Well, the last one that GPT summarized was that curiosity is a gateway drug to AI fluency. And I don't remember writing that in the book, but I love it. So we probably should have. Anyway, well, that, again, I think this will be a helpful book for people who are really trying to figure out their role and how to level up their role. And frankly, I could see people buying it and leaving it on their boss's desk just anonymously. It would just like magically show up someday and with a post-it note, read this. Hopefully it helps really unlock, I think, and demystify, which we talked about last week, demystify some of the things that AI is and isn't, and also probably de-hype some things and make AI a little less scary. Because I talked to a group today who shared the overall sentiment in their organization is that AI is scary, and they need someone to come and kind of help bring that down a level.
Yeah. So another exciting chapter. Before we wrap up, anything else you want to share? Any news? Any big things going on in your life?
Well, I don't know. I think I heard that you got a new title.
I did get a new title. I'm going to be moving to the position of VP of AI Innovation at Donor Search. Still managing the DSAI team, but also working on AI throughout the organization on where we can go. But I got a new title because I think you're getting a new title.
I'm getting a new title. By the time this is released and this episode comes out, it will be public knowledge that I've actually accepted the role as Chief AI Officer at Virtuous Software, which is a company that I've admired really for years. Probably it's a 10-year-old company. I've probably admired them and their leadership and their culture for at least 8 of those. So yeah, super excited and being able to lead AI innovation within the org and still be able to be a thought leader externally and really continue to do the things that I'm already doing. And you and I are going to continue to do them podcast. And so, yeah, super exciting to see how orgs are really diving in, going deep on embedding AI, not just haphazardly, but strategically within their orgs and infusing AI into all those things. So yeah, congratulations to you. I know I'm excited for you, and yeah, thank you. And honestly, it's been an amazing 7 years working together. So this will be the first time we're going to be although we're already, in different states, in different organizations, but it's just going to be a lot of fun to watch and see how you grow in that role. And I know we're still going to see each other a lot.
Yeah, this podcast isn't going anywhere. The book's not going anywhere. Still plenty more that we both have to do. We'll be doing together and at different sites. So a lot of good things to come. Thought of the week.
Yeah, you go first.
Tip of the week. We already talked about it, but I think it goes in line with the chapter. If you haven't done it already, put a constant visual reminder of how can AI help. I used to have it as can AI help? And I realized that was a yes or no question. That was kind of limiting, but assume that it can and just try to figure out the pieces of how it can. So keep that up. Always a constant reminder. You can offload things and you don't have to keep doing it the same manual way you have been. Just got to figure out how.
Yeah. My thought of the week is still, it's around the same theme that it really, I struggle with, because I love innovation and I want to try new things. And I also want to make sure that we condition ourselves to say no when it's appropriate to say no, collectively. And so I think it's, the mantra in the back of my head, and I hope it just becomes a mantra in the back of all of our heads. We've never had to do this as humans, but just to continually ask ourselves, I guess we have had to do this as humans. We have to ask ourselves, just because we can doesn't mean we should, and make this a thing. It was helpful for me to think about it even as, from a financial perspective, just because I can buy this doesn't mean I should, right? Because it just stack up credit card bills or whatever. Or just because I can eat this, it doesn't mean I should. And so we do this in a lot of other kind of more natural ways within our lives. And I think, being able to apply that to AI is something that seems a little bit like a disconnect, but it's so, so important. And, not to dismiss technology because it's new and different, but to try it and put it to the test. And so, that's where I look at Mallory Erickson and Practivated, the new tool that she's built that does, coaching for fundraisers to simulate an ask, essentially, to help them kind of level up, is she had me put it to the test and try it to do different things. So I don't know. I think we're going to find ourselves doing that a lot in the next, 12, 24 months as AI just continues. The information explosion will happen. And if you read AI 2027, you'll know all about the information explosion that will happen in 2027. That when that happens, we have to be prepared to ask that question. Just because we can doesn't mean we should, and have a way to evaluate that. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but we just need to get really good at that as humans.
And I think we're ending on a great vibe.
Well, what are we going to delve into next week? We'll talk about chapter 4 of the nonprofit AI book. So great to be with you, Scott. Congratulations again. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next week or ish for another episode of the Fundraising AI podcast.
Yeah. And if you're at AFPICon or Woodmark, hopefully we'll see you there.
Sounds great. All right. See ya.
Cool.